So now you're building apartment buildings rather than those single-family structures, which have a higher construction cost per square foot because you have to do things like using either reinforced concrete or steel structures. You have to put in elevators. You have to change the way the plumbing works so that it can go against gravity much taller. And in a separate research that I published with my friend Mike Erickson over at Purdue University, we took the construction data from RS means and looked at exactly how it changes for buildings of different structures. And when you build those tall buildings, the cost per square foot goes up significantly for those reasons.
This is Maestro Minute, the show that discusses all things real estate, sharing interviews with the most successful people in the industry. Hear from their perspective and what they are doing to achieve success. Get exclusive tips on how you can also succeed in real estate. Maestro Minute is brought to you by Maestro Development. Here's your host, Nareg Muradian.
And then getting into real estate development, I know we talked a little bit about that as it relates to rent control, but why is development different now than it was before?
So part of it, like I said, is that the amount of land that we have to build on is dwindling. That makes it a lot harder. Let me start with that story, and then we'll layer some government problems on top of that. The story there is, if you want to expand your city and build more housing, the easiest way to do it is to go out to the suburbs, find a piece of greenfield land, throw up a wood frame structure, and you can build at scale. You can build thousands of houses that way. That's the way we built most of America, right? That is the easiest and the cheapest way to do it. But eventually, you expand as far as people are willing to commute, and now you've run out of that green field. So what do? You start to turn back inwards. And so what we found in the research that I did with Chris Redfern, we started looking at where are new units allocated over time. In the 70s and 80s, the new units were allocated out in the periphery. In LA, San Gabriel Valley, Inland Empire, up in the San Fernando Valley, right? As we moved towards the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s, we started to see more and more new units being added in the core. We started to see more and more units being added in denser neighborhoods. Denser meaning there's already a lot of units there. That's what we call infill development, as you know. The problem with infill development is it's harder to do. You have to try to sandwich a building in between other buildings. You have to try to find the few vacant lots that exist, and those vacant lots aren't necessarily big and easy to build on. They might be carved into a weird shape. You might need to do land assembly where you need to take that piece of land and assemble it with another piece of land so you can get a big enough piece of land to build on. And that means you need to pay out two different landowners who might drive the price up on you through the bidding process. All of that makes it more expensive. And it also means that the only way to add significant new units to the city is to build multifamily housing. So now you're building apartment buildings rather than those single-family structures, which have a higher construction cost per square foot because you have to do things like using either reinforced concrete or steel structures. You have to put in elevators. You have to change the way the plumbing works so that it can go against gravity much taller. And in a separate research that I published with my friend Mike Erickson over at Purdue University, we took the construction data from RS means and looked at exactly how it changes for buildings of different structures. And when you build those tall buildings, the cost per square foot goes up significantly for those reasons. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We should do it because it's the only way to add the units that the city needs. But it means that new construction is gonna be more expensive no matter what you do than the way we used to build it in the past. We took for granted how easy it was to build in the past. Then you layer on top of that the fact that the process of getting approved to build anything has just gotten harder and more uncertain, riskier, and more time-consuming over time. We have layered regulation on top of regulation, and it's not just one political party. There are liberals who have put regulations in place to try to protect the environment and people's health, and a lot of those are very positive. There's also a lot of conservatives who have put regulations in place because they wanted to segregate neighborhoods and keep certain groups in certain places, and that's what my book is about, that unfortunate part of our history. All of this has resulted in this patchwork quilt that is just mind-boggling. When I teach my students about some of this stuff, I'll show them flowcharts that the city of LA gives to try to help people do development. Okay, do you have this kind of building or this kind of building? Then go here. Okay, well then you need this kind of approval or that kind of approval, then go here. And before you see it, it becomes this maze, this labyrinth to try to just figure out, how do we get a project approved? It could take years and years and years. And it has gotten, lots of evidence has shown this, it has gotten more and more onerous over time. That's only going to drive up the cost of development.
Thanks for tuning in to the Maestro Minute Podcast. Make sure to rate this podcast if you found it helpful, share it with a friend that could use it, and follow us on all major podcast platforms. The Maestro Minute, powered by Maestro Development.